America, my name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you at least once a week to talk about something political, something that'll help you not squander your life and help you make sense of the world around you. Let's just go right into it. There are a handful of policies that people who consider themselves at least liberal, sometimes progressive, those two mean different things, but they consider themselves not conservative, are actually conservative, but there are a handful of programs that these people tout, and these people have money, and so they get other people to tout them also that are fundamentally inadequate to the problem, but these people who tout them and have money don't really care about solving the problem, right? One of them is the ACA relative to healthcare. The ACA does not solve our healthcare problem. At the root of our healthcare problem is that people need more healthcare than the money they can earn. So the government needs to decide to print money to pay the doctors, the slew of doctors that everybody needs in order to pay for their health care. Because if you don't, that squeezes employees into paying way too much of their check to get their eyes and their teeth and their colonoscopy and all of these things that actually cost money. And I expect the healthcare providers to actually get paid. I'm not one of those guys who forgets that like healthcare providers need to get paid themselves. So we need to come up with a scheme that through the public sector just prints money to pay healthcare providers to give people healthcare. The problem is we also want people to work, and we use healthcare as a cudgel to force people into the employment force, into the labor force. I think it's a little bit strange that we picked healthcare as that which forces people into the labor force. I think there are other ways to force people into the labor force, a little bit more elegant ways to force people into the labor force, and without putting their healthcare at risk, while also we squeeze employers because a lot of mid and small employers can't afford to pay for their employees' healthcare. And that's their huge cost, which is keeping them from both producing what we want them to produce as employers, which is employees, but also the goods and services that they're actually trying to produce to make money, right? So we need to figure out a way to take the burden off employees, employers, and yet still kind of push people into the workforce lest they just kind of opt out, right? So this is a problem that the ACA is not a solution for, right? The ACA still puts too much of a burden on both employers and would-be employees or people even out of the market by forcing them to come up with too much money, because the central problem is they need more healthcare than they can afford. And something like health is an inelastic good that you really can't go without, and you shouldn't have to go without and still be a free American. So we need a real solution, either Medicare for all or some sort of single payer solution that or if we're going to tie it to employment, we need to guarantee people a good job with health care and reasonable wages and a fair say in their working conditions, a good unionized job. So I'm not so crazy that I won't entertain options that tie healthcare to labor. I'd rather not, but I'd be open to tie it to a job if we guarantee people a good public sector job, doing a lot of the work that we need that we know needs to be done. We just don't care if it gets done because the people who would serve, we've decided that they don't matter. We don't care if old people who have their houses riddled with mold and gutters don't work and they have deferred maintenance up the wazoo. We don't care if they get their gutters and mold removed and asbestos removed and all of that. We don't really care about all of that because those people don't matter. But in a public sector jobs program, something like the WPA, we would actually go in and do all of that deferred maintenance that has accrued since the last WPA. A lot of those WPA projects, you can go to the internet and look, there are a lot of those WPA projects still around, right? So if we're going to tie healthcare to work, we need some sort of public guarantee of jobs so that everyone has a good job. Not the way we do it with workfare, where we tie it to the private market and then the private market gets the most vulnerable people and pays them pennies. So the ACA is fundamentally a broken solution that was supposed to be invested in and was supposed to call progress. right? But the only people it's progress for is for people who don't actually feel the problem. For people who actually care about healthcare, it's obviously a bad, like an inadequate solution, fundamentally inadequate solution, right? So it confuses people as to the adequate solution. It confuses people as to what progress looks like, all right? So that's one seemingly progressive policy that's actually regressive because it's confusion. It's confusing. I'm going to do another video on why confusing politics, even if it gives you what you want, is bad politics, because people don't know what they're doing or how their problem was solved. You haven't actually grown people's capacity to govern both themselves and with other people. You've just confused them while giving them something that they happen to have wanted. Right? So confusing politics is actually bad politics. It's just not an obvious form of bad politics because you get what you wanted. Right? So the ACA, seemingly progressive, actually regressive insofar as it's confusing the problem and has people confused about what the solutions to the problem would be, or actually even facets and factors of the problem. Right? Let's go on to the second thing, union elections. Let's take Joe Biden. Everyone says, Joe Biden is a pro-union president. There have been more petitions for union elections, an uptick since he was elected. More people are trying to form unions and failing. Because of the way union elections are structured, employers have so much of an advantage and both propaganda and just threats and force that the union elections often go to the employer, and then you interview on the sly the employees after. They're like, well, yeah, they said if I voted for the union, I'd get fired. Right? So the uptick in union petitions and union elections is another one of those solutions, one of those things that looks like progress, but is actually regress because it confuses the problem. What you need to have is that every industry, every shop over 100 employees, you're automatically unionized. The question is, which private sector union, which independent union are you going to vote for? Because that way you have the unions going in and trying to, make a case for themselves to the workers, and then the workers deciding which union to go for. You don't have an election for whether your state is going to be a state. You have an election for which congressman you're going to elect, because you understand that being a member of Congress, being a state, isn't a question to be debated anymore. We've just come to see that the people in West Virginia need to be members of West Virginia. They can't vote to be, it's not put to them every cycle. We don't call it progress when it's put to them every cycle whether they want to continue to be West Virginians. Or we don't have the default being not parts of a state. We don't every 6 years allow people to go stateless, because that's just not how political representation we've decided should work. And we shouldn't just allow people to go unionless, because that's not how modern employment works. It's bad for everybody. But we can allow you to pick which kind of union, which union you want to join, and based on that union's priorities, both political and social, and how you think that they're going to represent you both in the workplace and beyond, in the quality of life and work conditions that you think are appropriate to people of your, particular activity, right? So you should get to pick which union, not whether you're going to belong to a union. We don't allow stateless people. We shouldn't allow unionless people. There is no stateless person in the United States. You belong to a state. Which state is up to you. And I'm for free movement of states, but there are no stateless people, right? So there should be no unionless people for that reason. But instead, we have this system of union elections, which is fundamentally flawed and is fundamentally unserious and will not lead to any sort of real labor power. And this actually matters for black people because we are the most unionized people. Because that allows us to keep our jobs. And this America, and black men are the most unionized people in the United States, because we need that protection as targets of the United States. We are targets Like that protection actually matters. Those are the jobs we can keep. All right. So, by the way, if you appreciate me doing my job, what I'm doing here, go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing, which is good for the world because I'm trying to help you not be confused about both your political, social, and your family life. Right? So the current system of union elections, you have to vote in order to be recognized as a part of a group doing the thing that you're doing. That system is fundamentally broken. So it doesn't matter how many elections you have. It's a fundamentally broken system. It's like the ACA. It doesn't matter how you force people to participate in the market. It's a fundamentally broken way to think about healthcare and the problems of healthcare. Union elections are a fundamentally broken way. Union certification elections are a fundamentally broken way to think about labor power. It should be which union do you want? And then there should be like timelines on bargaining and like more muscular constraints. But we can't get anything if we're just focusing on like getting more union elections, union certification elections, when it's manifestly inadequate. It's a manifestly inadequate problem. It's not as inadequate as separate but equal, but it's a fundamentally inadequate problem. Solution to the problem, right? And now the third thing, we're going to talk about child literacy. Look, I've told you before, if you want your kid to learn how to read, you're going to have to teach them to learn how to read as a parent. Don't expect these schools to do it, especially for your black kids. Don't expect these schools to do it. And which is like, that's just what it is. If we were serious about it, we would actually get serious about it and say that these kids have a right to learn how to read. And that means the government's going to print money to do whatever it takes to make sure these kids know how to read, which means that it would get class sizes down to 1, 2, and 3, as small as it takes to get kids to read. But instead we just say, well, the parents will take care of it, and then be surprised when it just doesn't happen. Forget the fact we're dealing with generational illiteracy. We're dealing with people who have a very hostile communities with hostile relationships to school and education in general, but especially schools. So, and they become parents, and then like their kids are going to have a very it's complicated relationship with schools, right? And like I said, generational illiteracy. You need a more muscular intervention. And people say like, well, what needs to happen is parents need to volunteer at schools. And if parents volunteer at schools, that'll help. And anybody who says that is fundamentally unserious about the problem. That's an unserious solution. And you can say that because your kids can read because you taught them how to read, not some other parent. If you're serious about it, you go in, you have to do it to yourself, to your other kid. And if you're serious about a nation where everybody knows how to read, you need to vote for the kind of policies that'll shrink class sizes down to 1, 2, or 3 for the kids who need it. And that's all they do. And that's when it could be one of the federal jobs we're talking about, where people get paid, $70,000 a year to teach one kid to read. And that's a good use of $70,000 a year. Because we don't want that kid to not read and then end up, committing some crime, and then we're paying for that person to go in jail anyway. So I think not just individual education plans. I'm talking about individual teachers who are dedicated to one student. And at the end of that, year, that one teacher has taught one kid to read well, that is a good job. That person should be able to retire with a pension after so many years and do just fine, because that's the job. And I think that is more than honorable. If all you did is teach one, if all you did is, and all we're doing is paying that person to teach one person to read. Now we should have standards and standardized tests at the end of the year. If your job is to teach one kid how to read, I'm going to need to know that kid at the end of the year can read. You had 6 hours a day with that kid. I don't want to be surprised at the end of the year and find out that at the end of the year, Johnny still can't read. You had one job. I think it's a good job, but I want some accountability for you doing that one job. And I think that we should honor that. Right? But this whole idea that parent volunteers will do it, there aren't enough volunteers to do it. That just means you're not serious about the problem. You're fundamentally not serious about the problem. But the thing is, for all of these unserious solutions, both union elections or candidates who support union elections, both the ACA and candidates who support the ACA, and parent volunteers and candidates who support people who support parent volunteers being the solution, there's going to be more than enough white money to form some sort of nonprofit or whatever to say that, yes, that's a wonderful solution. That will definitely fix the problem, because the whites who will pay for it are fundamentally unserious about fixing the problem. And so, but they want to seem progressive, so they'll go for these kind of solutions that won't change the status quo, won't change the vulnerable, like won't empower anybody, but they'll pay for it because it'll give you the illusion of fixing the problem. More union election gives the illusion of increasing labor power. The ACA gives the illusion of healthcare democratized. And and saying that, like, well, we'll just have more parent volunteers in the classroom gives the illusion that it'll increase literacy rates in a substantive way. But we need, like, more serious solutions to all of those problems. And with the ACA, it just needs to be some sort of scheme where if you're going to tie it to a job, you need to guarantee people good jobs. And give vouchers for employers, because I would like to be able to hire somebody. Look, you give me enough money to hire somebody, I would like to be able to hire somebody. But if you give me enough money to both hire them and pay for their health insurance, you need to give me a lot of money, which I think you should. You should go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in your $5, $15, $50 a month. But I think it would be better if I could just hire them for a fair wage and then someone else pick up their insurance, or get a voucher to pick up their insurance. And I think that would be good for the nation. If you want to, yeah. So tout me as a job creator and go to www.funkyacademic.com. Also, with the union elections, if you're having a shop over 100 people, they're going to be unionized. The question is which union, not whether they can be certified as a union shop. It should be a which union. And if you tell people that progress looks like having more elections about whether people can be certified, then that's a regressive progress. It's progress that actually confuses the problem and misplays the problem. And the same with literacy. If you're serious about every kid learning how to read to be a functional citizen and colleague in this democracy, then you need the green light printing money for specialists to go and deal with the people who generationally have a hostile relationship with the English language and letters. With a hostile relationship with literacy, you need to be willing to vote for the candidates who will print money to get the class sizes. And we need to talk in terms of not parent volunteers, but class sizes down to 1, 2, and 3, if that's what it takes. And I'm for teacher accountability, but I'm not under the illusion. Having taught all of my kids who all now read well, that myself, I'm just not under the illusion that if kids who are both hostile and have all sorts of other blocks, you're not going to be able to teach 20, 15 of them in a classroom. I just don't think it's not possible. And the numbers bear out. But we're just not serious about those kids reading. So we try to pretend that solutions that manifestly won't work will work, but they won't work. So go ahead and talk in the comments about how you see other people getting you invested, trying to get you invested in solutions that fundamentally won't work because that's what a certain class of white donors will pay for. I could probably put in this recycling for global warming, household recycling for global warming, when the problem is industrial waste. The problem is the airplanes. All right. So thank you for your time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com. Let me just check in with the chat really quick. The VA healthcare. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, VA. Everyone should have the VA. I think, maybe that's what we said. Instead of Medicare for all, we should call it VA for all. How about that? Some veterans would get a little bit persnickety, but it would also give veterans who like talking about themselves a chance to talk about themselves. VA for all. VA for all. VA for the people. All right. Thank you for your time, and I will talk to you at the end of the week. I want to talk about some other things, so I might do another show at the closer to the end of the week. Peace.